Hello and welcome back to ESBR Boxing. I'm delighted tonight to be joined by my colleagues Gregory Doyle and Elliot Stott for a big fight breakdown ahead of January 20th, the main card in Liverpool, Natasha Jonas against Mikaela. It's a big fight for Natasha Jonas, defending her IBF welterweight title, and on a big sort of hometown card for herself. Gents, first off, thank you for joining me tonight, and how are we both?
Yeah, all good, man. Thanks for having us. Looking forward to that fight. Good fight, so it will be. It'll be competitive. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, all good. Thanks, mate. Good fight, good card in Liverpool. So I think we're being spoilt in the month of January as boxing fans, to be honest. So yeah, long may it continue, hopefully.
Yeah, I do agree with yourself. January notoriously not a strong month for boxing, but obviously we've got this card, so we'll get straight into it. Coming to you first, Elliot. Obviously a big night for Natasha Jonas in her hometown. She's been involved in some big fights before. You know the split decision draw with Terry Harper and the loss to Katie Taylor. Having Mikaela, who is 19-1, her only loss and her only blemish being a split decision loss to Alicia Baumgardner, which was widely regarded as an extremely close fight. And a lot of people did have Mikaela being the victor. So do you see this being Natasha Jonas's toughest test? Or would you argue sort of the Katie Taylor fight would have been a harder test for Jonas?
Um, yeah, it's a tricky one because Jonas is just kind of she's moved up in weight and now she's coming back down. The Kate Taylor fight was 3, 4 years ago, I think. It was a little while ago. So it's tough, but I consider Katie Taylor to be on a different level to Mikaela or Natasha Jonas or Terry Harper, if I'm honest. So I'd have to refer back to the Katie Taylor fight as Natasha Jonas's toughest test. However, I thought she did very well in that fight. I thought Taylor won just about. I thought it was a very close fight. Um, but yeah, would definitely refer back to that Katie Taylor fight as Natasha Jonas's toughest test.
And yeah, I do agree with yourself. Obviously, Katie Taylor, again, is going to go down as one of the greatest women's boxers ever, and probably one of the greatest Irish sports people ever. So it's no shame in Natasha Jonas losing that fight. And like I say, it was a close contest. Greg, sort of same question to yourself. I know you are a massive Katie Taylor fan yourself. So would you sort of agree with what Elliot said, or do you think what the test that Mikaela is presenting for whatever reason and the differences, do you think it may be tougher?
I was really appreciating the Katie Taylor love that you were both giving her there. I totally agree with you both. It's different on for a few different reasons. It's helping a higher weight. It's a girl who's probably bigger and physically stronger, like Mikaela is. It's really difficult to say. I would say Katie Taylor's the standout. Forget that I'm our biggest fan. She's just boxing ability wise, she's in a league of her own. When it comes to anyone on Jonas's record, but I would say that Mikaela is got potential to be that number two spot. Absolutely, I think this is a hard fight for Natasha Jonas. I think it's one that she's really going to have to get right.
Yeah, I think, and again, another fair point from yourself. And I think this will rank definitely, I think you can say second in her toughest fights, and you can't really argue with that. Staying with yourself, Greg, what do you think Natasha Jonas has to do to win this fight? You know, looking at their records, Natasha Jonas is the bigger puncher. She got a much better knockout percentage compared to Mikaela. And realistically, if the judges on the night had seen it differently, the prospect for Natasha Jonas could have been an unbeaten fighter in Mikaela. So what do you think Natasha Jonas has to do to get through this test?
Funnily enough, we talk about Natasha Jonas's power. I think actually going to have to outbox Mikaela because, for example, when Mikaela fought Alicia Baumgardner's a very aggressive fighter. She likes to get inside. She likes to throw hard shots. And Mikaela most of the time seemed relatively comfortable with that. So I think she might need to outfox her. I think counter punching is going to be really important for Natasha Jonas in this fight. So if she's going to win, I think she needs to fight bursts. Just find a time where she thinks that she's caught Mere a little bit off balance, a little bit inactive in a round, etc., and swarm it. So yeah, counter punching for me probably I would say is Natasha Jonas's best friend in this fight.
And then throwing it straight over to you, Stotty, do you agree with Greg, or do you see it as with the sort of with the test that Mikaela Myers presenting, and with her style of boxing, do you think Natasha Jonas needs the stoppage, or do you agree with Greg that she needs to sort of come out in bursts and try and outbox her?
Yeah, I do agree with what Greg said. It's just I find this one a really difficult one to unpack, partly because of the size difference there. I just think there's such a difference in terms of height and the way. I just think how both fighters look on fight week is going to be fascinating. Obviously, Mikaela Mara is actually moving up. She was at fighting at super featherweight against Bam Gardner. Natasha Jonas has been at the weight above the last couple of fights and is moving has moved back down 7 pounds to welterweight. So it's a tricky question to answer. One point I would make is that out of Mikaela Mayer's 19 wins, 19 wins, 14 of them have gone the distance. Out of Natasha Jonas's 14 wins, only 5 of them have gone the distance. So I just think to me and I just think one thing I just find really enjoyable about women's boxing is how intense the rounds are. It's 10 2-minute rounds. You can kind of blink and you're halfway through a round. And I just do feel like if Natasha Jonas is to win this fight on points, she's going to have to start those first 3 or 4 rounds well. If she doesn't, I just think she could find herself 3 or 4 nil down. I do think that's a possibility. Could she come back? Could she be 3-4-5 nil rounds down, or 4-1, 5-2, that sort of scorecard, and then win via stoppage? Yes, I think that's a possibility. But yeah, I think starting well, and look, it'll be interesting to kind of hear that atmosphere on the night as well. I don't know if Mikaela Mayer will have been in that sort of atmosphere beforehand where everyone is against her. Basically, we'll see. But it's a really difficult one to predict and unpack, in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree with both of your points, and sort of bringing them together. I think it's a case of looking at what Greg said of Alicia Baumgardner being quite an aggressive front foot fighter, and Michaela Mayer never really looked in much trouble. So you sort of do have to question, can Natasha Jonas step on the gas enough to put Michaela Mayer in trouble? And like you say, Elliot, if she's 3 or 4 nil down, if she's chasing the fight, can she find that big punch? And it is a very difficult one to sort of unpack, but it's an open division. So my next question for yourself, Elliot, is what do you see next for the winner? Because obviously Sandy Ryan had that draw with Jessica McCaskill for the rest of the bouts in the division. So do you see potentially a different opponent for the winner and a rematch for the two aforenamed mentions, or do you believe it will be the winner of this will go on to fight sort of a McCaskill?
Yeah, I think kind of with women's boxing, fighters can move up and down the weights, and I think an issue here is that at the weight below, at super lightweight, Katie Taylor's got all the belts, and it's likely, possibly, that she's going to be fighting Chantel Cameron or possibly Amanda Serrano in her next fight. So I don't think moving down is an option. I'm not sure there are many attractive options if you move back up for the winner. There's that Terry Harper fight at super welterweight. I feel like the possibility of that rematch has possibly come and gone between Natasha Jonas and Terry Harper. So yeah, I think that the winner, there's a good chance they will stay at welterweight. But I think there's a possibility that the Sandy Ryan fight could appeal. Michaela Mayer has fought in UK 3 or 4 times now. I'm sure she wouldn't mind coming back and facing Sandy Ryan. Natasha Jonas is obviously from the UK, so I think that's a fight that could appeal as well. And the fact that Sandy Ryan and Jessica McCaskill had that fight last year, vast majority of people feel like Sandy Ryan won that fight. So really, surely you want to fight Sandy Ryan instead of Jessica McCaskill, in my opinion. If you fight Jessica McCaskill, there's going to be a demand that you then fight Sandy Ryan. If you fight Sandy Ryan and beat her, I don't think there's going to be the same demand there to fight McCaskill, in my opinion. So yeah.
Yeah, I completely understand where you're coming from, and I do have to agree. Especially, I did think Sandy Ryan won that fight. Um, it's quite interesting. We've seen, obviously, we're talking about future fights, and obviously we've seen dodgy decisions almost for Natasha Jonas previously, and the same with Mikaela. So it is interesting looking at those going forward. And same question to yourself, Greg. Do you agree with Elliot, or would you prefer to see the McCaskill fight next?
No, I do. I agree with him. When I go to answer these questions, what I'm always aware of, Owen, and it's just sad that this is what you need to take into consideration with boxing, is that in Britain there's that promoter rivalry.
Mm.
I'm sitting thinking, I think Sandy Ryan, she's still with Eddie Hearn, isn't she? And some of these fights are just very politically complicated to make. Whereas I think if Mikaela Maya was to win this fight, you can see the next fight for her probably being Sandy Ryan. Wouldn't be surprised if Natasha Jonas wins. I'd probably say it's more likely that it may be Jessica McCaskill because there's not really a lot of politics there. So it'll be interesting to see what both of them do, but that's what I would see as the front runner for both.
Yeah, again, I think it's a very valid point that when we look at these potential fights, what's next, etc. The fact you have got all of these sort of promoter rivalries, promoter politics that stop us getting so many great fights. And like you say, it could be a case again here of promoter politics sort of this stops the fights from happening. Back to yourself, Elliot. It's sort of almost a potential future fight, but the likeliness of it happening not as much. We've seen Natasha Jonas speak about Clarissa Shields. We've seen Clarissa Shields sort of trash talk back towards Natasha Jonas. Obviously, Clarissa Shields is at middleweight, so it'd have to be sort of a meet in the middle. Natasha Jonas steps up and Clarissa Shields comes back down a weight. Do you see that fight happening at all? And sort of regardless of whether you do or not, what percentage of a chance would you give that fight of actually taking place?
It's again like this. I feel like this call is full of tricky questions. I would be interested to know when Clarissa Shields next going to be in a boxing ring, let alone fighting Natasha Jonas. I don't know if this year she's going to focus on PFL. Or I went on her Instagram page the other day and she was kind of rapping or singing or doing something like that. So I'm not. It's a hard question to answer. Yeah, I think I think Clarissa Shields, I think she wants challenges,
Mhm.
and kind of moving down in weight. Fight and Natasha Jones would be a decent challenge, I would say. But I just think there's lots of kind of ifs and buts, and I feel like for Natasha Jones, there's possibly easier fights to make that are still big fights in the names that we mentioned earlier in the call. So do I see it? Not really, but I don't really see what Clarissa Shields is doing next either, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't think, like you say, Clarissa Shields knows herself what she's doing next. The PFL deal is an interesting one, especially as they've now sort of, I believe it's PFL that have brought Bellator out, so their ranks are getting even bigger. And obviously, when they'll be looking to compete with the UFC, the money that Clarissa Shields could earn from that could be incredible. So it's a really tough one to sort of break down. And when you don't know what the actual fighter themselves thinks their next move is going to be, it puts it in a position for ourselves to answer where it's almost impossible to answer. But the same to yourself, Greg. Do you see that fight happening at all? And if it is it a very slim chance of it taking place?
I'm not a big Clarissa Shields fan, I have to say, but what I would say is that I believe she'll fight anyone. I think she doesn't fear anyone. She would really back herself to beat any woman in the world, and you've got to really respect that. I think if the money was right, basically what I'm saying is I think Clarissa Shields would fight anyone. But like Elliot elaborated on in your cell phone, we don't really know what Clarissa Shields is going to do. And to back up your points, I don't think she knows either. So yeah, if she comes back and makes her play in boxing, I think she'll fight anyone if the money's right. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I think Clarissa Shields is definitely in a position where it's money moving forward. You know, her legacy is undoubted. I'm not a massive Clarissa Shields fan myself either, but you can't deny her legacy in the sport of women's boxing. It's there for all to see, but I think now it's just like you say, a case of whatever makes the most sense financially. Gents, I know it's been a tough one to break down, a very close fight, and you can see arguments from both sides. I am going to ask yourselves for a quick early prediction, just straight to the point. Who you think's going to win? How you think they win? Greg, with yourself first.
Yeah, it's a really tough one, guys, isn't it? It's probably we do a lot of big fight breakdowns, and I honestly think this might be the hardest one that I've kind of came out. It's been very, very tricky. There's just a lot of grey areas, and both of them I would probably say are quite well matched in ability. I think Natasha Jonas maybe wins a close points decision. I think she probably is a tough night, and I think she might just see her way through at the end of the fight. I think there'll be tricky moments. I think there may be controversy. I think it'll be incredibly close, but yeah, I'll go with Natasha Jonas on a close points decision.
Over to yourself, Elliot. Do you agree in Natasha Jonas points, or do you see a stoppage, or do you see Mikaela Mayer?
I'm going to agree with Greg and go for a very close Natasha Jones decision. A factor here for me is Mikaela Mayer is just moving up in weight one fight at a time. Fought Bumgardner, lost to Bumgardner, moved to lightweight, moved to super lightweight, and is now moving to welterweight. And I just think surely it's hard to keep moving up in weight and your first fight at a new weight to be fighting a world champion, one of the best in the division in her home city of Liverpool as well. So that's one of the main factors why I'm going for Jonas. I don't think Jonas will stop Mikaela Mayer, and I think it could be close, but yeah, Jonas by decision.
Think I'm going to have to agree with you both and make it a full house. I think we could see some controversy again, potentially even looking at a draw on not a personal scorecard, and we see Jonas as the hometown fighter and champion just sort of nick the decision. But as we said, gents, a very intriguing fight, a tough one to break down. But I think you've both done a stellar job of doing so with some tricky questions. For those in the watching, let us know in the comments. Do you agree with ourselves? Do you think Natasha Jonas gets the win? Or do you think we'll all be wrong come fight night and Mikaela Mayer takes the victory? As I said, let us know in the comments. Like, subscribe, keep an eye out for our other content on Fight Week. And thank you both for joining me tonight, chaps.